Welcome to a new 3D primer. I'm going to be going over Polypaint, which was mentioned to me before on the Twitter book. Someone asked about colorize and how you do that. That's Polypaint. So that's what we're going to go after. We're going to use a handy dandy rock that I just made here to kind of illustrate what's going on. And it's pretty simple, straightforward. I actually think I'll throw this up for free on Gumroad after just the model, so you can take a look at it if you want in ZBrush. So first thing you want to do is you're going to want to change your shader, because you probably have the red wax shader on it or some random thing that you've chosen. That's not going to show your color well, so you're going to want to choose, I use Skin Shade 4. It's just pure white. That makes it a lot easier to see what's going on. Right now it seems a little hard to light some things, but it'll make sense in a second. So this is just for Polypaint. I was thinking about going into Spotlight, but that might be for another primer. I want this one to be short. So you've made your model, you've got your high poly and everything. Now you want to texture it in ZBrush and just paint some colors. So you're going to want to go to Polypaint, which is in your Tools drop down. You're going to go to Polypaint and click Colorize. It's that simple. Now you can start painting on your model. The key to this, though, is I just use the standard brush. You can use any brush you want, though. I choose standard, and up at the top here you have choices of mRGB, RGB, M, Z add, Z subtract. This is for sculpting, Z add and Z subtract. Z add is the default. M is just for the material. You can see that says material channel. RGB is just red, green, blue. That's your texture. And then mRGB means you would paint material and RGB. We just want RGB, so we're going to turn off Z add. You just turn them on and off by tapping them. So we're going to go RGB, and you can see I have a color picker over here. So I'm just gonna, for example, use white or red, my bad. And now you can see I'm painting red. Change the slider, just colors. Now I'm painting green. And that's all there is to painting on here. So you're gonna choose the colors that you want, and I'm gonna make my rock sort of, let's make like a brownish thing going on. And I'll make my brush really large. I'm gonna paint a color on here. Oh, I got lazy mouse on. L to turn lazy mouse on and off. You may need it for something if you're doing like little swervy, smooth lines. You may want lazy mouse, but for now I'm going to have it off. So I have my base color. I may want to add some other color types in here. I'll go add some lighter little bits. This is pressure sensitive if you have it set up to do so. So I can go really light, go really heavy. I'll just kind of get some variation in here. Now, if I decide I want the color that I had before, I don't have to go hunting through here. I can hover and I can press C. And if I press C, whatever color I'm over, you can see if you look over here at the color picker, you're going to see it changing color. So if I do, let's do something really obvious, put a green over here. See, it's brown, green, just by going in between those. So I've got some base colors. This is pretty neat. I'm going to pick, oh no, I'm going to pick, let's pick more of this brown, kind of spread it throughout, give it a little bit of variation. This is great and everything, but it doesn't look super good. So the next thing we're going to go over in Polypaint, you know the basics now, is we're going to use masking, which is a lot of, especially for things like rocks, it's super powerful. So go to masking, same tools drop down, and now you have all these different options: mask by fibers, mask by AO, cavity, smoothness, all that sort of stuff. So I can choose cavity, and I have all these settings. If I click this, you can see it's masked out all the cavity like dips in here, and I can change the blur amount, do it again, and really get some different looks. So you can play around with this and kind of get what you're looking for. And this is the same, this is just a mask, so same mask controls. You can add to the mask, you can subtract from the mask just like you normally would, or if you tap outside, it'll invert it. So now I have all those dark areas paintable, basically, so they're not masked out. And I can choose a darker color, and I can paint. And I don't have to do it everywhere. I can just do it in a few different places, maybe areas that I want to really highlight dips in the model. Kind of go back and forth areas. And then I'll get rid of my mask, and you can see I've actually painted in the dips of the model here. So leave that mask back on, undo to get it back. You know, maybe I want to go a little deeper here, and I'll get rid of that mask. You can see I've got some cool information starting to happen there. So I can go to, let's do smoothness. Choose smoothness. Ah, that's kind of cool looking. So I know if I invert this mask, I'll be painting what I see here, basically. So I invert that. Choose like a, we'll do like a mossy dark green. And again, the key is you don't want to just glom it on, because it'll become very obvious what's happening. Because if I see, I have this cool darker green going on right here, but if I just go crazy with it and undo it, I'm going to get some weirdness. Maybe you want that in some areas, maybe you don't. But this will give you some more cool effects. And this is just messing with the masking features that ZBrush has by default. This isn't even using like brushes of any kind or any cool things like that. This is just using masks. So I'm starting to get something here. So if I go peaks and valleys is another good one. And you can see I've got some of the higher areas. Maybe I want to change the range, kind of bring some of those flat areas out. And really, like, maybe I want to make these edges highlighted so I can adjust the range even more. Maybe I'll invert that. I can make something even lighter. And I'll go just over these edges. And you may discover while you're doing this that you apply a mask and you see that that really dark color looks super cool in a certain at a certain setting. It kind of gives you an idea of what you could paint for it as well. So I'm getting some neat ideas. Go through here, adjust that again. Maybe I want to get some of these dark ones in here. See how this looks if I had some like mossy green. And this is really loose form of this. You can get into brushes and using alphas and doing like dragging and things like that. So I could do, say I want to do a drag. And actually here, I have these other brush types here. So I can do something like this. And I can turn, remember, for every brush you change, you have to turn off Z add, Z subtract, set it to RGB. Otherwise you're going to get some sculpting going on. So you can see I'm dragging this texture now, the brush alpha over things, and I can use that as another way to get different variations and information on my model. So I can keep doing that and get some cool things going on here. Maybe I'll just use this for some really light information. Let's get some nice noise going on, and then go back to things like cavity. I'm gonna do something darker. You just kind of play with this stuff back and forth until you get the looks that you want. Remember what you set on your brushes, because you got to keep changing it back. But you can see some cool stuff forming here, and it really hasn't taken very much work. I'm really just letting the model do a lot of the work for me. I've already done all this sculpting. I'm just highlighting the work that I've done. So the more detail and more information that you put into these guys, the easier it's going to be to paint this without really using any kind of textures or any crazy hand painting, anything like that. But if you did decide you wanted to do more hand painterly stuff, I could do, like I said, C, choose the color that you had. Maybe I want to go a little lighter. I can kind of paint highlights along these things because I've decided I want to have control over that instead of using masks. I can go over edges and highlight these different pieces, and you can choose to completely 100% hand paint a model if you want. So you can see I'm getting some cool highlights here, and go down some of these ways here. As I start getting some cool color blends, I can keep pressing C to kind of choose colors within my gradient and other colors that'll work from mixing them, just like painting in Photoshop. You get the idea. So you can keep doing this and keep iterating on this over and over and over again until you find exactly what you like, or the level of detail that you're going for your specific model. And then you would simply go into something like X normal, and you would choose vertex color as a baking option, and that would bake this color information directly to your low poly. So that's the absolute basics for Polypaint. I hope that was pretty simple. You have your high poly model. All you have to do is go down to Polypaint, choose Colorize. That's going to let you paint. I suggest using a material like Skin Shade 4. That's pure white, so whatever color you paint you can see. You see I turn, Polypaint, turn off Colorize. I still have a brown color. That's because with Colorize off, the object reflects whatever color you happen to have chosen. So turn on Colorize. It still saves that information. It's still there, but you can toggle it on and off by turning on Colorize. And then using masking abilities like mask by cavity, peaks and valleys, you can really start to pick out a lot of information without having to do too much work. And that's really it. It's pretty straightforward, and we'll go over some of the deeper things like Lightbox. We'll probably cover that in maybe the next 3D primer. We'll link these guys together because they do work together really well. That's projecting textures onto something, but it kind of outside of the scope of this one. But that's it, and I hope that was helpful. Come by next time, and we'll go over Lightbox and or whichever one it is, Lightbox. There we go. Sorry, there's a million different boxes and things like that in this. So until next time, thank you very much for watching. Really appreciate it.